Oh, I certainly do. Thank you. If anybody needs pants, I have tons.
All set?
All set?
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Call to order the February 16th, 2023 meeting of the Scarborough Economic Development Corporation. I think we are going to start with member roundtable comments. If anyone has anything, I'll just say a couple quick things. First, in terms of I guess the lending environment right now, we are seeing we have started to see a slowdown sort of right in January. We hadn't seen it as much, but I think rates are starting to make an impact. We've actually had a couple deals in process where the people have just the borrowers have just sort of reconsidered. It's, you know, some loans need to be refinanced. Some people are, you know, there are some projects that obviously need financing, but the ones that are, you know, we're just seeing a lot of people kind of say, well, I'm going to sort of take a wait and see attitude with the uncertainty surrounding rates. We're expecting rates to go up again as of next month, so I don't think that's going to help anything. But you know, we just have started to see a slowdown in borrowing. Other than that, just yesterday I went to the Eggs and Issues, which was the president of University of New England, and that was great. That was they're doing very well. They have the campus in Biddeford, which is mostly undergraduate. They have the Portland campus now, where they're building a new $100 million medical school, which is basically going to double their medical school size. But the president really talked about how they they really try to focus. They go through market research and they try to identify majors that lead to jobs, and that's their sort of sole mission, is to have their graduates have jobs, and they have the highest job placement rate of any university in Maine. One of the interesting things he was talking about is that a lot of smaller, not as well-known liberal arts colleges are failing or are going under. You know, he said, let me take a step back and say, for one, Colby Bates and Bowdoin have nothing to worry about. You know what I mean? It's you know, it's not those types, but it's a lot of schools that, like, again, that aren't as well known, that aren't as successful, that are just, they're seeing enrollment drop with the prices the way they are, and, you know, people wondering if college is worth it. So there's definitely but they're doing very well. So that was an interesting speaker. That's about it.
Yeah, not too much. I guess speaking from their retail side, January was actually a little bit better than I expected. It's usually our slowest month. So that was nice. And then it was nice to see some good spend over the Super Bowl and Valentine's. So people are out there to a degree of still wanting to spend money, and it seems like there was a lot of gatherings and a lot of other things like that. So I think it bodes well for the whole retail industry overall. That's basically all I got on this side.
And you have your new license in place, or when does that?
Yeah, we started in September, and we actually started wholesaling to bars and restaurants too. So we've done some business with Nonsuch. We've contacted Stewart O'Reilly's, and we're working on a dedicated wholesale order system through our website, so they can just go on there, place their orders, and we bring it right to them. So really identifying a 5-mile radius of our store and try to service those places as best we can.
Most of the conversations that I've been having at the county about the region, and Tom's been on a lot of these calls too, he probably knows where I'm going. Almost the only thing we talk about these days is housing and homelessness. They're both beyond their breaking points, and we're feeling it in Scarborough, certainly It's what the county's talking a lot about with our ARPA funds. I don't have a solution here today, obviously, but it's just swallowing up on the government side. 70 to 80% of the oxygen in every room I'm in is talking about the challenge of emergency housing and the things that have been predicted about affordable housing for years have hit us to the point where companies can't hire people if they need to move to the area because they literally can't move to the area. We're in a genuine crisis on these things, and it's going to take a lot of work to work our way out of it.
Yeah, just put a finer point in that. On a nightly basis, Portland is housing 1,000 people every night. And during the cold snap in particular, where they really encourage people that would otherwise not choose to go inside, really came inside. They had to put up people in chairs. Every square inch was taken of every facility. So
Put babies on their laps,
Yeah.
chairs and babies.
a segment of this challenge is the new mainers, the asylum seekers, and that is. I think we've got enough experience to know that that's sustained and going to continue likely. So one of the interesting initiatives GPCOG is actually spearheading is coming up with they're called transitional housing or temporary transitional. So the notion there is these folks have some unique challenges. By federal immigration law, they can't work for a year. So they present themselves and are totally at our mercy. But they also have some really unique needs, just connecting into the culture, language barriers, all sorts of things. So the notion is to build temporary housing, I'll say, for these folks for up to 2 years. And then presumably others will cycle in behind them as these folks are able to kind of get on their own. Ambitious proposal, but really cost effective. If you look at how we're providing for that need now, and typically at hotels, it's exponentially more expensive than they were doing it now. So there's hopefully there's start to get some traction. There's a really good group behind this. We're looking for municipal support. Scarborough will be considering the next couple of months. But hopefully there's an answer there, because I think it's a great economic development piece. In large part, these folks are our future in some respects for labor and youth and all sorts of things. So I hope we see it as an opportunity, because I really think it is. Just as we start to finalize our outlook next year for budget, the assessor is quite bullish on what the expected increase in value is in town. We expect will be equal to last year or maybe slightly more. No great surprise. Scarborough Downs is really the economic engine there. And that build cycle is about 18 months. So we had a pretty good sense of what this year would hold, just with the housing starts. Next year, I think we're going to see a precipitous drop off, and that's because of an item that's on your agenda today. The changes to the growth management ordinance have a real tremendous effect on them and others. But then in particular, and we haven't seen the effect of that yet. It's in the out years. I guess the last thing I'll mention is that it looks like we're going back into a fairly deep dive on marijuana establishments and all the associated issues. Somewhat inevitable. I wish it wasn't happening right now, but we're back at it. Well, stay tuned.
Can I?
Oh, sorry, is that because I'm assuming a lot of requests?
Yeah, we have, I think, over 50 establishments in Scarborough. You might be surprised at that. And the good news is they're nondescript. You don't know who they are necessarily. There's a concept. No retailers. We do not allow retail, but predominantly growers. But there certainly are manufacturers doing edibles and confections and all sorts of things. The odor related to cultivation is really the challenge that we have, and those types of nuisances, in spite of the fact we've got mitigation standards which they comply with, we need to look to see if they're appropriate. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to measure odor and isolate it and enforce it, if you will. That's just the reality of nuisance type complaints, whether it's noise or light or odor. It's very, very hard to isolate, because you need trained personnel with calibrated equipment. It's really a challenge. And then the biggest challenge we have is the concentration of cultivators down at Snow's Cannery, Field Cannery, which is you know, an old dilapidated building that has been repurposed for these interior grow spaces. And there's 15 cultivators in that one facility, you know, kind of sharing walls, if you will. So to my earlier point, it's even more difficult to isolate who's the culprit, right? You just know that when you go by the place, it smells.
So, Tom, just to put a pin in that for us, you know, I think we've stayed largely out of the licensing issue. But I think some of the comments at Marita about cultivation really starting to drop off. And part of the issue is redevelopment of those buildings that have sort of been, I don't want to say contaminated, but you know, the growing does have impacts on the structure itself. And then
There's also technology just keeps increasing, which very quickly makes some facilities outdated
right,
and, you know, more expensive to grow than some of the new ones where can make better use of space and better use of the, you know, watering technology, you know, I mean, it's amazing how quickly the
right,
technology's changing
Yeah,
too.
it looks like the industry's kind of settling out of that. I think
Mhm.
it's totally in flux right now, but there's certainly going to be a core group that's here for the long
Right.
haul, no question.
and I would say if there's, you know, obviously some of the structures that they may be in. Could be targets of redevelopment over the next 5 to 10 years. And, you know, we're gonna have to, we should take a look at that. So I think. Now that industry is settling in, this is where I think SEDCO needs to do some work on what does the industry look like? What's the future of the industry and how that may impact the community? We don't need to be involved in the licensing details, but understanding the industry better and how that may change their demands is something we should do.
One of the speakers last night, his name escapes me, we find out, he represented that he has 10 employees. Be interesting to know what sort of
Yep.
economic impact
Mhm.
this brings.
I absolutely
I
agree.
don't think we appreciate that there's probably 100+ people in town
Right.
that are
Mhm.
directly employed
Right.
in that industry.
Right. And I suspect other communities are facing some of the same issues, so we may be able to work with some other communities to come up with some really research questions, if we will, and have us all work toward that and have some crosstown information about what that industry is doing.
I guess the other thing that's occupying my time, I'm very actively involved in the site search for the school building, which is really becoming quite challenging. Finding 25 acres and at the proper location is really hard to come by in this town. Stay tuned.
No more room at the downs.
There certainly is room. There's complications. Not complications, it's just, it's a more complicated
Yeah.
conversation because you've got a deeper relationship. There's just a lot of tentacles that come in there. Go ahead, Rick.
I don't have, excuse me, I don't have anything particular to add, this housing problem is so serious that it's dominating everything. Our role largely is to help businesses develop in Scarborough. If we can't find places for them their employees to live, we got a real problem. So I think we certainly need to do everything we can to help the development of affordable housing. I watched the GMO workshop last night, although it was hard to, I forgot my iPad, so I had to watch it on the phone. I didn't quite understand how it impacts or how it affects or how it relates, I guess, to affordable housing, but hopefully it won't.
Yeah, I think Aaron and I would agree that the current proposal probably misses the mark in that regard. And I think the authors acknowledge as much. I think you'll see some modifications there. Probably my prediction would be outright exemption for affordable and workforce that are deed restricted. So ones that we have a high degree of assurance that they're going to be built and stay as affordable.
That'd be good.
That's my hope. We'll see.
Just to kind of level the playing field, if you will, my business contacts are more on the trades side of things, or the construction side of things, and having had an opportunity to meet with several of them recently, I'm hearing them sing a little bit different story now. It's always been can't get help, can't get help, can't get help. And now it's can't get good help.
Mm.
So that's kind of changed a little. So they're looking for quality people, and that's the only way they can find quality people right now, as they're indicating to me, is they gotta steal them. So, you know, the problem's kind of going from over here to over here and circling around. So, and obviously the other thing, the only way you steal people is you gotta start giving them more money or, you know, promotions, whatever the case might be. But that seems to be their driving issue right now.
Is good defined as trained or good defined as people who show up to work every day? Is there,
What I'm hearing is more technical ability, technical
Okay.
quality. And the other thing you hear is more from the customer relationship quality. Their ability to be able to actually behave while they're at work. So those are the two major things that I'm seeing. But they just visually around town, I don't know if anybody else is seeing this, but I'm seeing a lot less help wanted signs. Every building used to have them. And now it seems that seems to be slowing down some. So I'm not seeing as many signs out there saying that they're looking for people. I don't know if that's because business is down or if it's because, you know, they've finally started to get some folks, but
or they gave up?
that's
they're
visual,
giving up,
or they
they're
gave
just
up. Yeah.
Restructuring their business. to
Yeah.
fit.
So that's just a visual thing I see as I'm
Mm.
moving around town. But that's what
I've
I've
also
seen.
just, I mean, some of them may not be looking, but those same places, I mean, I can't tell you how many places now are just not open 7 days, even
Oh,
5 days
yeah.
a week anymore.
Yeah.
It just, haircut places, restaurants, I mean, you just go to their websites and they're open 3 days a week.
Yeah.
You
Someone
know?
sent me a picture of they were on the Mass Pike and the Dunkin' Donuts at the plaza, you know, closed on a Sunday
Oh,
because no staffing.
Yeah,
Like,
Wow.
so I mean, I think to
Yeah.
your point, it's sort, maybe there's just, they've adjusted
Yeah.
to how they think they need to in terms of what they can do with the amount of help they have.
You mentioned,
Yeah.
you mentioned haircuts. Well, we gave an award last fall, right, to the boroughs. Any appointments there are 2-3 weeks out.
oh,
They
yeah,
are unbelievably busy.
yeah,
Yeah,
And I think they've got 10 people.
wow.
yeah.
Like El Rayo, they don't have waitresses, it's.
Yeah.
Go to the
Yeah.
counter, Mr. Bagel, it's drive-through only. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of the businesses have just adapted to
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
current job market.
And I will say, I think it came up in the discussion last night with respect to the rate of growth ordinance. And some people may be feeling like growth is too much because there's not enough help. And, you know, may not be the right connection.
Mm.
Or not enough help is in some respects, a function of not having enough housing. So I do think that there's a sentiment that if I have to wait in line longer, then it must be because there's too many people
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, in last comment is in terms of the GMO meeting last night. One of my takeaways is that one, I thought the concept was really good. I like the concept that they were leaning for, and not to get detailed, but they're describing 3 different areas of town, three different types of areas. And they were looking at allotting a certain amount of permits, if you will, by area. So I thought that made a lot of sense. And the only thing that I guess that I'm wondering is, and if I was on either the council or the planning board right now, I'd be a little worried because I'm thinking that if things go just the way they are, we're gonna see a lot more contract zones. But that's just my thought. Because it doesn't look like, my impression from last night was that there was no mention of that whatsoever. But I believe that those contract zones may be looked at outside of the GMO. Is what I'm surmising.
Hmm.
So that any,
Well, contract zone isn't a process they could use to gain. To get around the GMO.
Somebody suggested it.
I don't think it qualifies. That's where the conversation is, should they create this other exemption path for projects to come forward, be heard and be decided on?
Yeah.
Within the GMO. Which is what they went through last year and they all hated it, so. There's no good.
I
answer.
just,
Yeah,
So
I don't
let
know,
me-
it just
can I
looked
just
like that
ask,
was
so
a-
when Pepper Shores went in for their 52 new homes, was that considered part of the GMO?
You also needed other zoning relief,
Right,
that
I
was
mean,
the
we
big-
had to do the contract zone.
right? And as part of that, they also, it was under a different regime.
Okay,
They gave you access to reserve pool.
oh, okay, okay. Because
Yeah.
then I would agree with
Yeah.
Alan that that
They
contract
just-
zone is gonna be the way people are gonna get around that.
felt like that might have been a loophole. So,
interesting.
You know,
Did we get Nick? on?
Yes.
We did, okay, thank you.
Nick, I'm sorry, Nick, can you hear us?
I can. How you doing?
Good
Hi,
morning.
Nick.
Yeah, just real quick to Alan's point, and Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, but in order to go through a contract zone process, you're actually putting something in a spot that's not allowed. So,
yeah, there's some other relief required under the zoning ordinance, yes.
right.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised if it's used as just a home building tool, or the zone would not have to allow for that type of activity there in order for people to try to build in a spot like that. So, yeah, it's
unless they're
tricky.
looking,
It's tricky.
if they're looking for density or something like that.
Well, the density is defined by the zoning.
I can just share that we are dealing with the workforce housing issue as well. We've lost probably 3 candidates that we're gonna relocate to the area, and they just can't find any place that they can afford. And we're actually interviewing on Friday for a facilities director, one from California and one from Texas. And that's one of the concerns is, not that they couldn't afford it, but are they gonna be able to find someplace to live? We are getting an intern from Maryland for the summer college intern. And she's actually going to be living in one of our guest rooms because, again, trying to find help that can find housing is going to be really hard. So,
Talk about an immersive,
oh yeah, we're like, I warned her. I said, there's going to be a lot of knocking on your door. And she's going to be living at the Meadows, which is going to be
Oh,
really interesting. But the other thing is that, we actually had 16 new hires in January at Pepper Shores, which I think was really positive. And we're hoping that will kind of continue as we look at opening the Meadows. We're looking at 30 new hires for the Meadows. So we're just got a lot going on there. On a general note in healthcare and nursing, and Tom and I were talking a little bit about agency. There's a lot of need for agency nurses, whether it's CNAs, LPNs, or RNs. We're paying somewhere close to, in some cases, $40 to $50 an hour for a CNA, which we would normally, like 2 years ago, the starting pay would be about $18, $19, $17, $19 an hour. But as soon as you start getting into agency, I won't say the name of the facility, but there's a facility in Portland who they are paying $2 million a week in agency to be able to maintain their staffing.
$2 million in salary.
For
Okay.
agency.
salary and fees, right?
Salaries and fees a week. It's not sustainable. And you're gonna see nursing homes and assisted living facilities probably closing because they just can't afford it. So it's a crisis. And there is a new agency local that is looking to hire local people rather than traveling. But it's I think some of the traveling nurses are $200 an hour. And we have 2 traveling nurses that are coming. We're keep putting them in guest rooms again for a 13-week contract. So they have to stay with us for 13 weeks. So it's what's happening, and it's I'm a little worried for the healthcare system as a whole. It's just not sustainable.
Andrew, is that because the population in Maine is older than the rest of the country, or?
Part of it, but I think it's just, there's not enough, we have a lot of retiring nurses in the workforce, and I think there's not enough new. So I'm really positive news from UNE, like that they're willing to invest and really try to get that. So I think it's,
To expand their nursing program.
I don't know. I mean, so the culinary and the nursing are the 2 areas that I think are just they're just taking such a huge hit.
And it's CNAs and
Nurses,
registered, or
yeah, RNs and LPNs. It's the whole nursing
Okay.
spectrum. Yeah, that there's just not enough. So it's you know, and then so you're gonna have nursing homes and assisted livings closing.
Right.
And so then what? Where are the seniors gonna go? Yeah.
And were you able, did you make a connection with the school, with the Scarborough's CNA program that
Yes.
they used to
Yeah.
run?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we host a certification program where the CNAs, we work with the adult ed program.
Great.
And the CNAs can actually train and work here, and then we can see how they do and, you know, and be like, are they a good hire? So we're doing that, so. But
Right.
yeah, there's just not enough people interested in going into the nursing field, so.
Yeah, I know evidence is supported, but I suspect the pandemic has put a bit of a chill
Oh,
on
yeah.
that. It's a tough environment. My daughter's a nurse. She's 12 hours a day with N95s and full
Mhm.
face shield and.
It's
It's
brutal,
great
and it's
work.
in 3 years, I mean, we're 3 years in March with this, and that's like,
Yeah.
it takes a toll. For sure.
Nurses and teachers.
Mhm. Yeah, so.
Helen, and then Jim and Nick after that.
I'm just gonna echo what Jonathan said, you know, real estate, commercial and consumer has really. Come to I don't wanna say a screeching halt, but it's definitely slowed down. What I am seeing is a lot of baby boomers retiring and selling businesses. Which is encouraging.
Are they selling locally, or is it locally? Oh, good.
I'm working with a chiropractor that's moving into that estate to purchase a practice and, not in Scarborough, but, the Walton area. And then another, people just retiring, you know, they've been in business for 30 years and their children don't want it, so they're looking to sell.
And just a question for both of you, is the slowdown related to climbing interest rates, or?
Could be seasonal too.
Okay.
I mean, this typically is in the busy.
Mm.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is definitely you know, what
Okay.
happens in the spring, but I think interest rates. At first, as far as I saw it, interest rates were not really slowing down the requests. What you
Mhm.
saw was that sometimes the deals had to be reworked because the leases in place and the rents in place at the properties couldn't support the new interest rates. So you had to maybe lower a little bit and, you know, lower the proceeds a little bit and rework things. But we've started to see, again, things in process. Just look, we're not sure that these renovations or this project is right for us right now with interest rates where they are. So that's started to be a little bit more that direct cause I've seen, so. Glad to know it's not just us.
No, it's not anything. I mean, prime's at 7.75.
Yeah, always gonna go
So,
up.
you know, anybody with a line of credit, any business with a line of credit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be 10%. We haven't seen that.
But ironically, that's exactly what the Fed's trying to do,
Oh, exactly.
I know.
It is.
you know? Somebody said to me the other day, why is everybody worried about the economy? We've almost got full employment. That's exactly the problem. And anybody who's got an economics degree knows that there's a sweet spot of unemployment and it's
Mhm.
like 4.5% unemployed. It's typical, it's simple supply and demand.
Mhm.
There aren't enough people. You gotta pay more to get the help. People gotta get money to pay them. They gotta increase the price of their goods.
Mhm.
Bad situation, inflation wise.
It's the difference between the analytical at the, you know, 30-foot height and the individual, like loyal companion closing and people being out of jobs and anyway. So yeah, there's always
Loyal
that push
Companion?
and pull.
They're staying
Oh.
open. They're being purchased by, they're not sure who it is yet, but there's two companies bidding for, I think, 4 or 5 oil community locations.
Right.
So they will be open, but they don't know who it's gonna be owned by.
Last I heard was they weren't keeping the Scarborough store though.
I talked to the manager
Did
yesterday.
they, oh, that's the change from last week. That's
Yes.
Oh,
excellent.
that's good.
Yeah, she said that they are staying, March 1st, they'll know who the new owner
Right.
is, they just
Oh,
don't know
good.
yet.
Yeah,
It's empty right now, it's,
right.
there's
I
no
know.
product in there.
Right.
so-
That's good news.
What is that?
It's a
Oh,
pet store,
pet
it's
store.
a, it's a
Yeah.
chain pet store, yeah.
Bellows?
Yeah, so good. That's
Oh,
because
that's
there were
good.
3 last week there were 3 stores,
Yep.
including Scarborough, that weren't going to be included in the buyout.
Yeah.
But as everybody knows, things like that change at the last minute. So that is very good
Yeah,
news.
yesterday she came in.
Good.
for us, so.
Oh,
Good.
good.
That's great for Pat and her employees. That's
Yes,
awesome. Jim and then Nick. Nick can close us out. Jim?
I'm here.
Oh, hi.
Good morning. I'm running around a little bit this morning, sorry. So, from our point of view, we had a great holiday season. Business was great through the first, New Year's Day. January, a little bit slower. Probably Christmas was expensive, the economy, inflation, whatever. Our prices here are pretty fair. Lobster just recently took a little bit of a jump, but it was fair pricing all through January, despite some pretty bad weather out there. Scallops, Maine scallop season, scallops have been probably $10 cheaper a pound than they were last year. So that's good. Haddock and the ground fish have stayed where they were. So pricing is decent. And we had a very busy Valentine's Day on a Tuesday of all days. So that was exciting to get back into the mix a little bit more. Our smokehouse, Dunstan Smokehouse, again, a big shout out to Kylie Mason and Sebago Technics for taking the ball and running with it. Our permit was granted on January 9th, and 3 days later, we had our addition up and constructed. So it's
ready.
insulated. The inside is buttoned up from the weather. So thank you very much. That was great. Thank you very much to our builder, Kevin Bedard Builders, for getting that up and done. We were waiting for a while on getting a chimney installed for our smoker. That was installed on Monday of this week, and trumpets, fireworks. We used the smoker yesterday. So yeah, it was exciting. I yesterday the girls basketball team had a playoff game, and we were decorating the bus, and I get on the bus and everyone's sniffing. Smelled like a campfire. What's burning?
So Jim, how long between when you're running the smoker and you get product on your shelf?
Well, we'll be able to produce product for Pine Tree Seafood immediately. As far as Dunstan Smokehouse goes, once we sort of dial in the operation of the machine itself and apply our recipes to it, we go to Katahdin Analytical, and they do a shelf life test. They basically sit it on a shelf and test it every day. We need to know the salt content, because that's very important too. As soon as we get our results back, we can go to the state and schedule our inspection for the facility itself. And then we'll be able to sell in the state of Maine until we feel comfortable applying to the FDA. And getting FDA approval will allow us to open up the gates on our website and sell across state borders. So that'll be very exciting.
Cool.
So we've incorporated some new recipes, and I think that those have been exciting with our customers, mussels in particular. So it's been a lot of fun. Great for the staff to have extra things to do in the slower time of the year, being creative, coming up with new things. So construction costs, probably not a shock to anyone in this room, but we're approaching probably double what we expected it to be. It's just whatever you have an idea for, if you're not in the industry, what things might cost, it's shocking. So, but it's necessary, and then we have the value on property here, and soon we'll have 2 going concerns to help pay for our mortgage. So it'll be great.
Awesome. And then Nick?
Yeah, so as you guys kind of covered, we've been busy on the council level. There was a 90-day moratorium enacted last evening on marijuana licenses and new businesses, while we kind of do some investigation into what it is out there that we're trying to grapple with, including some residential impacts, odor mitigation, things of that nature. And then the big news was the release of the GMO proposal. It's a draft. Some of the council feedback was pretty good. I think Tom's kind of covered that there might be a hole here for affordable and workforce housing. I'll speak for myself on that. I think the way it's structured with the different areas of town receiving different amounts of permits, kind of targeting where the growth is supposed to occur in town, with a big focus on protecting the rural farmland neighborhood type of areas, and then allowing the downtown district to come to fruition with the allotment they've received. We have a council corner meeting coming up on this, where we expect probably pretty heavy participation from the public. That is on March 2nd. And then, of course, we have a workshop. In the meantime, I think we'll take some of the counselor notes. It's kind of interesting, actually. Last night there was tried to get a sense of what people thought of the numbers themselves, and it seemed that we had 2 that were kind of like on the fence, as in, I could probably live with it. Not a whole lot to add. 2 that thought they were too high, and 2 that kind of thought they were too low. So kind of an interesting breakdown or summary of where people were sitting on it. So we'll have some work to do.
John, so I just wanted to point out, I know sometimes when we're doing these the roundtables, it's important, because I think this is where we pull what's happening in the community, and we can identify where SEDCO may need to do some analytical work. And so I really appreciate you guys bringing to the table all the things that you're doing. And it sounds like we've got a little work to do in a couple of areas. So again, that's the importance of doing the roundtable.
I should just mention, just for the benefit of the board, Karen's expertise in this conversation, I think Nick would agree, has been invaluable. And I think there's some additional work that we'd look for Karen to help support this effort on, coming up with a bit of a white paper. I think for good reason, we want to ground this proposal in data and rather than emotion and speculation.
Yep.
So I think that white paper, and I think Karen is the one that's going to help us really isolate what are those key data points that we need to understand and report on. So I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Right. And hopefully we're going to line it up so that, state law requires us to do it every 3 years. And so we'll have those benchmarks to look at. And I think there's a lot of things that we can do that will shore us up and make it easier for us to make decisions in the future.
The other point that might be interesting to this group, point was made several times last night, is that the focus has been solely on the pace of growth on the GMO, when there's a whole suite of items and issues that I'll call them as part of a growth management strategy, that the air's been sucked out of the room on the GMO discussion, where we haven't been able to focus on the other collateral issues that in some regards could be equally or more important in terms of at least managing the growth, impact fees,
Yep.
More concentration on conservation of land. There's any number of other things that we can and should be doing. So Nick, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that there was a recognition, we need to put this on the shelf for a little bit so we can actually catch our breath and focus on this other stuff. So,
I agree. I think the entire council's eager to put this issue behind us and move forward. Because there's a lot of other very big issues in front of us.
Well, good.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone. Next item is approvals, starting with the last meeting summary. Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
We couldn't see Jim's hand.
I have so many windows open and I'm not trying to.
Not going to tell us if any.
speak up, you guys, if you're saying no.
Second, the
I say yes.
financial report. Financial report, motion to approve.
And I'll second it.
Any, I should say, any questions or discussions? None, okay, all opposed?
Opposed?
I mean,
All in favor?
The mother may I, right? James, okay, then and following right along with that is, a proposal for next year's budget, which you do not have. I think town is still working on
Yep.
salaries, so
Okay.
we'll look at that. I need, just so everybody knows, I do need to provide a draft budget to Tom, I believe by next week.
Mhm.
So as soon as I get the numbers, I'll send them out to people.
Yeah.
I'm not anticipating any major changes, a little bit of adjustment within within our categories, but not really proposing any increases. The increase will certainly be related to salary and whatever whatever the increase is based on cost of living and other things. So we'll see where that comes in. So again, I'm not anticipating any major changes. As soon as I get the numbers, I'll send that out to you. Normally, I like to have you make an approval before I send to Tom, but I think we can send it out and I'll ask for any questions about that. But we'll do approvals in March. If that
That
makes
sounds good
sense.
for everybody, Tom, then.
Yeah, that works for me.
Great, thank you, Karen.
My red pen ready.
Hey, our budgets are lean and mean, man.
Okay, so this sort of, I think goes back to, if you look at the next section, this kind of goes back to a little bit what we were just talking about with having been so focused on the growth management ordinance for, I'd say, the last couple months, that there are a number of items that Karen wanted to discuss today. I think we'll do our best to go through them with the time we have left, but I think it's good to realize there are other things going on, so.
Right, sure. So the first piece we have, I think, in order is the Vision Committee is talking about doing another summit. It is in response, hopefully, or in consistent with some of the efforts that the town wants to do in terms of really getting all the committees back together and going through some different questions. So we've used this format of inviting all of the town committees together. Generally, we start with the leadership of each of the committees. Everybody's invited, but we want to get at least one person from each committee coming to the summit. And part of it is a report out on what everybody's working on. And then we like to focus on an issue. So the first one, I think we really focused on communication because it'd never been done before. They'd never had a chance to everybody be in the same room, talk about what the committees are doing and how they can, where they may want to work together, and just simply an understanding of where everybody's coming from. And I think in that there was a lot, that first discussion, there was really a reach out from the committees to be more connected with the council at that point. And I think that was a really helpful discussion, and council members really took that to heart. And you know, that was perfect for creating a space for communication. We've done others that have been focused on the comprehensive plan. I think that was the last one, and then the pandemic happened. And so we didn't do one for 2 years, and now we're coming back. And part of that is we've said to Tom, and I think some of the council members, that we are happy to bring this forum back, but it's really about the issues that you're interested in. It's not about what SEDCO or the Vision Committee is interested in. And so we just want to have that partnership with the town to say, we're bringing everybody together. You set the agenda. And so I think working with Tom and the council, we'll talk about the council goals. And I think I included a copy of the council goals in here. And of course, one of the goals that they talk about is homelessness. And I am hoping that I put the council goals in here.
I didn't see
Yeah,
it.
it's too bad.
Aaron, just like a process question, when you talk about having the committees come up with the issues, is that something that needs to be done before, or is it done at that initial meeting where they get to,
So
how it sort of,
in the agenda packet that we send out, we
Yep.
set the stage for the conversation.
okay,
And so we'll say, hey, we're going to spend a little bit of time on what each of the committee's priorities are for this year.
Yeah.
And then we want to focus in on, some of the council goals. And if it's not included in this packet, I must have probably printed out the wrong one. I'm hoping it was in the email one, but if not, I'm going to send you the council goals separately. But the council goals, Tom, you can help me.
Yeah, I think the council goals are certainly ambitious. They're, I think, better developed than I can ever remember. And they do cross kind of the spectrum. So I think there's something there for everyone, so to speak. So I think using the council goals is really a kind of a rallying point for the summit. Makes a lot of sense. And for us to make progress on some, much less all of them, are all, we really are going to need everyone kind of pitch in, I think. And so as I understand from the earliest and first summit, it really was an information exchange. In some cases, these committee members didn't even know each other, so it was just putting a face to the name, but it was also sharing what they're working on and understanding there's a lot of crossover and overlap and synergies that can come out of it. So I think that's part of it, but we're really using the council goals as the rally point. I think would be very helpful.
Right. And it seems to me like the last three, which of course, since you didn't have them, you won't know that. Talking about the housing crisis and the housing issue is one of them. And
Big one on conservation.
conservation, right. So there's a lot that can be done. Plus, I think this is the first year that some of the committees are buckling down and looking at the comprehensive plan, much like we did earlier in the year. We've got our game plan for implementing the comp plan. I'm gonna hopefully ask each of the committees to, if they've done anything similar, if they can share what their strategy for working on any issues related to the comp plan, that would be great. So yeah, we'll be working on that agenda. We've generally done it in either late May or early June. And so that's really the target for that meeting. And again, we don't want to run the agenda. I mean, we don't want to set the agenda other than what the council goals are and asking people questions about that. So we want to make it about that, not about SEDCO or the chamber or anything else. We're just a vehicle at this point. And so there may be a little bit of cost associated with that. We're talking about, and the chamber has actually allocated funds for the Vision Committee as well, but it may be putting some food and things like that. I'd like to do it perhaps at the greenhouse at Highland Farm. It's sort of open, it's got tables, it's got lots of space for people to run around, and most importantly, it's got good parking. that just makes it so much easier for folks to do. We've done it at we've
the
done it at
school,
Wentworth,
yeah.
we've done it at Martin's Point. So it might be nice to try to do it there. So we'll be getting costs on that. And I believe Tom offered to pitch in on some food, maybe. We'll see.
But a moment of weakness.
Yeah, it was a moment of weakness.
For him.
You were.
Yes,
you were-
exactly. 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 So it's not an expensive meeting to run, but it's nice to offer people some, at a minimum, water.
We can do that.
Yes. Tom's gonna pitch in the water at least. Anyway, so that's that. And as if anybody
Any
has any
questions
thoughts.
or comments on that?
You
Sounds
envision a 2-hour meeting or 1 hour?
Probably hour and a half is
Late
maybe
day,
2 hours, but
midday?
I think we've done it in the afternoon, like
Later.
4-ish.
Yeah.
At
Yeah,
the end of the day.
yeah.
Good.
Next on this is just some information on a proposal that's going out to do some revision to the zoning ordinance around outdoor storage. And so right now in the zoning ordinance, outdoor storage includes commercial vehicles, and commercial vehicles are not just licensed commercial vehicles, but if you've got a sedan on your business site that is branded, that's really, the zoning ordinance calls that storage. And then the next part of that is you can't park for more than 24 hours straight in some of the commercial zones. And so technically you're in violation. Now, the code office,
As more
I'm gonna
important things.
yeah, well, let's just, we certainly, if there's a complaint, if there's a worry about it, they're out there. But they're not out there actively looking for somebody who's got their, car parked with a magnetic sign on it. So what we really want to do is just clean that up. It does seem overly burdensome, and there are some things that we can do. And so there's been a proposal put forward that removes the commercial vehicle, this standard, from outdoor storage. And the other piece of that is really burdensome is if you're going to have it, technically it's supposed to be in a fully enclosed space. So if you're at, for example, Oak Hill Shopping Center, and you've got a commercial vehicle, there's not a covered space for you. So we want to take care of that. And we think it can be done really with screening and landscaping and other things, like we do other nuisances on a piece of property. So we just want to remove the burden of everything being outdoor or enclosed storage and put it back in the hands of the planning board to say, is this meeting, the definition of screening? Is it, is this keeping the standards of our high quality business districts, but removing that burden of everything being an outdoor enclosed space for outdoor storage. So there's a couple of pieces
So that's
to that.
not your own property, it's in.
A business.
So like
Correct.
at Cabela's, can you have a vehicle in the parking lot? So technically that's in violation.
If it's parked there for 24 hours, and the issue is it's, Sunday, nobody's
Yeah.
working on Sunday, and perhaps a vehicle is parked 24 hours. Again, no one's out there
But
trying to measure that.
Screening, that's gonna be really difficult.
Could be, and but we
I know.
also, we
Well,
also are
they're
talking
on
about,
private. They're
Doesn't
never,
matter.
no, that's what I was saying is that it's
well,
on a
and-
private property. So
Yeah.
that's different than on a commercial business lot.
so this is for
right?
the commercial zones.
Yeah.
And
Commercial.
not
Yeah.
commercial zones that restrict outdoor storage. So the other piece of this is we're trying to say, hey, and you know what, you can have up to 4 cars where you don't have to have major screening. So there is this 4-car exemption. And the reason that's I want to talk a little bit about that is that we did put that out in our newsletter because we wanted some feedback and the long range planning committee wanted feedback from businesses. Is for a reasonable number to say, hey, as long as you're not, taking away parking from customers and you've got the adequate parking, that can happen. Past 4, that really starts to be a fleet, and that's where the screening comes in. And so the only feedback we've had on that, we sent it out, is just a couple of questions that helps people understand it better. And then there was a concern from some folks in the industrial park that, wait, am I gonna have to go back to the planning board and show my vehicles and what that plan is? And it's like, well, no, that's not really the intent. The intent is going forward. Technically, no one should be doing it. We're just saying no one is, people are not illegally parking right now is our assumption. And so it's new projects that come in that'll be subject to the screening for more than 4 vehicles. So anyway, it's an attempt to really relieve a burdensome standard in the zoning ordinance and trying to figure out if we've got that right.
So I just wonder with new businesses, making sure that they have an opportunity to maybe park behind the building. And so I'm just thinking about like planning board when they're trying to create more parking for those scenarios so that it can be hidden.
Right.
Right.
That could be part of.
I think
the
there'll be all
screening.
sorts of creatives to
Yeah.
the screen.
Yeah.
Karen, I'm curious, what was the impetus for this?
Yeah.
Staff driven or is it?
This was staff driven. Brian and I deal with this all the time. I've got people going into, the new on Higas Parkway, there's a couple of new sort of flex spaces. And, there's a business that, yes, they're going to have a car out there and it's going to be parked. And I'm like, right now, can you pull it inside the bay? And he's like, yeah. So
Is this staff driven because they're getting complaints?
no, staff driven because technically
They're
when
in
people come
violation.
in,
Yeah.
we need to explain this piece to them.
Oh.
And so it's really about some of the new businesses coming in and saying, well, I don't think I can meet that, or I'm going to have to park my vehicle someplace else. Now, there's always going to be, and there certainly are instances where, there are some problems. Either they're up against a neighborhood and are parking too many vehicles, and this standard still will cover them. They'll get that, we'll be able to address neighborhood issues. It is really for, like, we've got someone at Oak Hill that has vehicles and the property manager, Steve Fergus, saying, well, I've got an alleyway I can park them in and we can landscape it for that one day that they're not out in the field. And I said, that sounds great, but technically that doesn't meet the ordinance. And so it's just after Brian and I have explained this to people over and over, and we're just like, this doesn't work. Let's just fix it. So it's been on our agenda to fix it for a while, but it's the last couple of months that it's come up several times. So let's just deal with it.
I mean, I think the 4 vehicle sounds like a good compromise on
Yeah.
that, because
Yeah.
a lot of the businesses may just have 1 to 2 cars or,
Yeah.
so it's not-
And so don't worry, you don't have to hide your car.
I'm there a lot, but not 24 hours at a time, so I'm good on that.
There you go. There you go.
That's good.
Right.
Doesn't that apply to auto dealerships under that, right?
Well, it
Isn't that
doesn't.
why this
They have more than
contract-
4 cars, so
They were all contract zone,
exactly.
Mercedes, Acura,
And
Volvo.
right,
Is it just branded vehicles?
But it's branded.
branded.
Okay. Because the.
But that's the way
That-
the town is treated.
So
Auto
there's a
dealerships.
difference because that's outdoor sales.
Oh, is
There's
that-
outdoor sales and then outdoor
Storage.
storage. And so for the car dealerships, they get caught up by the outdoor sales requirements. And so that forces them into a contract zone.
It isn't outdoor storage also, isn't there a percentage of property available limitation for outdoor storage?
I
That
can't
it can
remember,
only, it can't exceed 50% of the available space or something like that? I thought the
didn't-
ordinance was written something like that.
there may be a part in the in maybe the, it's not in the definition. So we'll double check
The
that.
reason why I say that is I remember there being a concern down in Dunston. The gentleman's no longer alive now, but he wanted to have an outdoor display place for like swings and.
So that's outdoor sales and you can't do, and you wouldn't be able to do that. So this is, I know, it gets, I confuse it myself because I have to distinguish it. Outdoor sales is different from outdoor storage.
Right, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So again,
Percentage of lot
yeah,
coverage.
yeah, the planning department and SEDCO, we're trying to be proactive on this one and take care of this rather than waiting for somebody to challenge it and say, this is ridiculous, or, whatever. So we're trying to think ahead. And then I think we've talked a little bit about the rate of growth ordinance. I did give you a copy of the comments from the developers. And, I think we skimmed over some of that last night, but I thought we had a very good session with folks who are doing housing development. It included Ben Devine, certainly the Downs, Steve Berg from Alpha Management, because they've been doing some infill there and have some other infill projects. So yeah, there's a whole host of people involved in those discussions. And I really feel like they were honest and constructive. Their view is, number one, the existing ordinance doesn't align with the zoning ordinance. And so that's really where, the new proposal really focuses in on, the designated growth areas, the downs, and really the rural area. So it's trying to distinguish between those three areas and align more closely with the zoning ordinance and the comprehensive plan. Predictability, certainly a very big issue. But one of the biggest issues, and it's something that I think SEDCO can certainly help with, is I think the housing developers in particular feel like they've made some significant investment in the community. And people don't understand the investments that are being made. And that's from infrastructure, from other things, from payment in lieu of for new housing or housing affordability. So there's a lot of different investments that these folks make, including things like, investing in, festivals and other things that the town is doing, like sponsorships and those types of things. So these are fairly invested citizens and groups. And so that's something I think we can certainly help with. And I think that's something that we can look at when we, start to figure on the white paper. Let's look at what investment has been made. We're not calling it good, bad, or different, but I think an accounting of that is important for people to understand. Certainly, by far, I think there's no one in the room that didn't agree. Why are we having this? Why are we doing this? And can you tell us what the growth management ordinance has done for us? And do we need the growth management ordinance or the rate of growth ordinance in light of the fact that we now have impact fees, a new comprehensive plan, and zoning that has been adjusted for the most part to fit the tool that the comprehensive plan has given us. And so, those are some great questions. And I think that's part of what we intend to look at with the white paper is say, here are the reasons why the council feels this is still necessary. And I think what the development community is saying, tell us what has to happen to make this go away. What will make you comfortable with growth? And I don't know that we can answer that, definitively, but it's from their standpoint, there's not that much land left. You know, if you're gonna make it super difficult and unpredictable, there are lots of places we can invest. And so, you know, there are other places to go. And that may indeed be true. And so anyway, I think you'll see in that summary, they had some, I think, really thoughtful comments to make, some of which I think the council or the committee dealing with it, they certainly addressed predictability and some of the other things that the development community is concerned about. I think we asked this group specifically, do you think the current GMO has effectively increased our amount of affordable housing or workforce housing? And I think everyone agreed, because of the exemption of the affordable housing, it has created more affordable housing. Workforce, not so much, because it hasn't really been a thing for us until the last year or so. And so I think that's really where the council subcommittee is going to go back, take a look at that, and figure out, you know, what that means. You know, how do we balance that need to direct and control the rate of growth with our desire to have affordable and workforce housing. And as I think Councillor Anderson or Chairman Anderson said last night, there is no perfect solution here. And all we can do is you know, try to move forward and get to something that manages multiple goals. So I'll stop there on that and just check in with Nick and Tom to see whether or not I've adequately addressed where the committee is at this point, or where the council committee is at this point.
Yeah, I think from one of the things that I think you noted, and Tom had as well, which was there's a lot of other tools in the toolkit to deal with some of these issues, and getting the actual GMO in place and just set with.
Oh, Nick, you may have gone away.
Oh, his voices.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
now you're back.
I am okay, because
Yes.
my screen has gone blank for some reason. So you can hear me though.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyways, I think that once we can get the GMO settled, I think there's a lot of other areas we need to be addressing, including the zoning. You've touched on it all. There's just so much in front of us that we can use and utilize for tools. I do agree that some of the contributions from the developers maybe have gone unsung. You know, but again, it depends on your viewpoint of you know, really what the pace of growth has been over the last few years. So one question I did ask the council to consider is where they are on affordable and workforce housing. And we hear this, you know, and it's very strong presence in this committee. But you know, you ask yourself, when has Scarborough done its job? What is the amount of affordable and workforce housing that is sufficient? We have made, I think, decent strides over the last 6 years. We're averaging 50 units a year of affordable over the last 6 years. About 300 units have come online. And if you compare that to the previous 6 years, it doesn't look like any had come online. So clearly there's been an effort. You know, does it need to go further? Possibly, yes. I think that's a really good question we should be all asking ourselves, is what's that saturation point? What is it? What's the goal? So what's the end game? Anyways, lots to discuss and think about. And obviously SEDCO's and Karen has played a large part in our discussions on the GMO, but there'll be more need for this type of feedback from committees like this as we go forward and looking at different zoning tools and things of that nature.
Okay, and Tom, anything else?
Nothing more.
Okay.
Karen? Councilor Hamel last night made kind of like a side comment. I think it probably went over a lot of people's heads. Maybe not. But I thought it was interesting when he made the comment that we're getting to the point where we're gonna have to start going up. Because we're running out of space.
Right.
So the only place for us to build kind of in the future is going to be up, which.
Right.
It's gonna impact all of our zoning, obviously, or zoning in our growth areas, so.
Well, currently zoning from a density and a height point of view doesn't allow that, but
Correct.
at some point.
The only place that I'm aware of is Running Hill Road. Way back when we were going through CPIC, we made, I think, a 6-story limitation up on the hill. For Running Hill Road, so that was one spot
Mm.
where we looked at potentially going up more than any place else in town. So,
And right now, Reading Hill Road, because of a lack of sewer. Is placed in it's not in the growth areas, so unless there's sewer. To
Right,
open it
sewer
up,
and water.
yeah, so right now it's not, but I think the intensity question. And how that works with the goals of the comprehensive plan.
Yep.
And that's really, I think, gonna be a focus of the long range planning
right,
committee.
it's gonna come at us, yeah.
Okay, and then this is simply, the next one is a question to the board. We were back at the Black Point Inn this year. So the question is next year, do you want to stick with the Black Point Inn? Would you like to reconsider the greenhouse at Highland Farm? I think a lot of people liked that. I will say parking is so much easier at Highland, so that is one of the factors. One is not cheaper than the other at this point, so cost is not really the issue. It's really about, do you want to sort of go back and forth? I think the Highland offered a little bit different type of meeting, even though we did the same things. It was just sort of more casual, more.
Can Highland hold the same amount of people?
They can hold more.
They can.
My only comment about Highland was when we had it there. One, we had the perfect evening,
Yes.
so keep that in mind. If it gets cool,
Yeah.
it could be a little different, and the other thing is there a way we could potentially do anything different with presentations?
Mhm.
Because you've got a much deeper room, and if you're way in the back,
Speaker
it's a
system.
little
Yeah.
more difficult for us hearing impaired people as well, to be able to hear.
Okay, we didn't do a good job either at Black Point Inn or at Highland with our audio system.
Yeah.
So Black Point Inn had the same problem, certainly with our guest speaker. So we have to pay some attention to that next year. And the greenhouse does have clear walls that can come down, and they do have heaters. So I think in October, we can still, even if it's a cold, rainy day, I think it can still work. The great part is, if it is a clear, cool evening, they can have the fire pit going and other things. And so, it's really up to you guys which way you go. Again, cost is not really the issue. It's, changing up.
Yeah.
And people love the Black Point Inn. I think people also really liked Highland. So it's totally up to you. We don't have to make this decision today, but I just want to put it before you. Because if we do want to go back, I need to let Black Point Inn know, and we need to start doing, there's a little more work to do it at the greenhouse.
But the technology, again, monopolizing time here, I'm sorry, but the other thing that you do have at Highland is that if we want to try to invite more people, we have that ability.
That's right.
And the town is growing, so we may want to look at a little bit bigger venue than what we've had in the past.
Yeah, we really max out at Black
Yeah.
Point Inn once you go over 100. And if you go over 100, you start having to park further away and make other arrangements but again, there's nothing wrong with 100-person event. Makes it a little more, makes it selective, not as many people can come, but there's good things and bad things.
What's the capacity of Highland?
Highland can go, I believe, 150.
Take that alone is a toss.
I would propose the greenhouse at Highland Farm.
One thought I'll just toss out there, we've had conversations
Not
over
gonna
the
work
last
out.
year or so about how to engage how to reach out to our list and engage them and say, here's what we're working on and so on. What if we just ask them, what if we set up a poll?
Okay,
You know, we might
Yeah.
be surprised that 5 out of 6 say they want to go to Highland, or you never know. I mean, I think it's just, we've talked about opportunities to reach out to our list and our membership and get engaged with them, so. Maybe just, what is a fun poll opportunity?
Could it be a little, I'll say more casual? At Highland?
yes.
Yeah.
I think that's
So-
what it's like.
What,
So let's,
Yeah.
let's
So-
put that in mind and,
So we've got about 10 minutes left and I want to get to all three if possible, but. Would it make sense to do the subcommittee next, just so we
Yes.
can get through that?
yeah,
yes.
Okay,
So we do want to start a subcommittee to start focusing on this, digital small business hub. And I know Jim has offered to lead that for us. I think there are others who may be interested. Jason,
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
great. And there are a couple of vision committee folks that are interested in helping out too.
just
So I'd
to
like,
put that resource center
Yep.
together.
yeah,
Mhm.
and some of it is pretty straightforward and simple. And then I think this committee can help us think more creatively, like, other than just adding all the resources, what else can we do that might be unique? And the city of Westbrook is also interested in helping us with that. If and when we're ready. So yeah, is there anybody else who would like to sort of focus on that? The report of that subcommittee will come back to the larger board. So don't feel like if you don't want to do a subcommittee, you'll still get to put your hands in it and understand what's going on and make suggestions.
Well, maybe you can, when they're gonna meet. You
Okay.
can just think, you can
I'll send it out to
send
everyone.
out and.
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
wanna come and.
Yeah. But Jim and Jason are uniquely
Yes,
qualified for helping us figure out what they need.
all right, and you said you're, the other members, are you looking for any outside business members as well, or?
I think at some point I think we want to get something
Something
to
to get. put-
to work with.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe we have a testing board of some other businesses once we have something together.
okay,
Uh,
I just
so-
wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
we got
thank
through
you.
that, But,
Yeah. And then maybe do homelessness and then Marita.
sure, yeah,
The homelessness grant, we are submitting under the Community Development Block Grant Program from the county, a small planning grant to help us as a community understand the nature of homelessness here in Scarborough. Basically, I'll tell you that I've spent a little time with Lauren in some other committee work where we tried to talk about homelessness. And when the Community Development Block Grant Program came out, I really felt like the planning program there is uniquely suited to where we are in our discussion of homelessness. And so I went to Lauren and said, you know what, let's tap into these funds and really figure out who's out there, what are the different types of homelessness being experienced here in Scarborough, and then get somebody with some real expertise in developing policy and just keep it simple. So we put that together, and half of it is really going to be spent on hiring some social workers out in the field to actually go out and talk to folks really in a concentrated time period. And then our understanding from talking to some of the folks who have more expertise in homelessness is that there really is a several different types of stages of homelessness, not just chronic. There's some short-term, and short-term may be where Scarborough can really make some inroads in that. We're not going to solve homelessness, but we got to start somewhere, and understanding where people are going, because we've had some talk with the Scarborough Land Trust, because there have been some encampments there. So we've just got to figure out where people are, where they are in this spectrum of homelessness, and then have some honest discussions about this. I will say, in our presentation, because Lauren and I went last week to present to the review board, and the review board is made up of folks from other communities and things like that. I sat through a couple of others that were before us, and ours was the one that every single person on the committee commented and said, we're so glad that you're doing this. We're hoping that this becomes a model for other communities to use. And, we felt really good coming out of that meeting to have some great feedback. So nothing is ever for sure, but I think we have positioned ourselves in the best possible light at this point. So we'll find out. I think it's probably June or so before we know, May or June, and then the grant would start in July. Again, it's a small grant, but I think impactful in terms of getting us started to have something to work with. And then Marita.
Do you want to talk? Or I can say, so Karen and I went through the Marita conference this year. It was an interesting one. It was sort of hard to completely wrap your arms around. It wasn't as completely everything is amazing as it has been in, a couple.
10 years.
Yeah, exactly. But you also had a lot of people get up there and saying, look, everyone seems to be talking like we're gonna have a Great Depression, and we don't see that happening either. A lot of the forecasts, things are incredibly strong still, pretty much across the board, all the sectors, very little vacancy. When it would get to the next year's predictions, what I did notice, you'd start to see a lot of statements with question marks after it. I don't think anyone was comfortable making a lot of definitive predictions like they have been in years past. A couple of things I'll just mention is that, housing is, like you said, it's all that's talked about. Last year, the keynote speaker was Speaker Fectow talking about his housing bill. This year, it was still very predominantly, talking. It was Greg Payne this year. So that's 2 years in a row that the keynote speaker has been about housing, and Speaker of the House and the governor's top housing advisor. That's 2 years in a row. So to your point, it seems to be the only topic. But housing obviously very strong, industrial incredibly strong. One of the things I found interesting about this year was that, a couple of years back, everything was strong except everyone was interested to see what the retail person was going to say, because retail, everything thought was dead. This year retail was very strong, and everyone was curious as to what office was going to be, because office is the one which is up in the air right now. And Nate Stevens got up at the end, and there's a little bit of vacancy. I think a lot of companies are still trying to decide what they're going to do post-COVID. Some are going back to work, some are completely remote, and the majority is some sort of hybrid. But again, sector-wide, everything's strong, vacancies are low. You're starting to see things come back down to reality a little bit. There's financing coming back versus all cash deals, inspections coming back, the buyers or the lessees having a little bit more power. But I don't know if I've said a lot, but please.
No, I just think office being at 6.5%, more or less, is pretty good news for us. A couple of big spaces out there that could change that dynamic, but office, I think many people, like retail, felt like office is gonna, the bottom's gonna fall out, and that's just not really happening. And I was gonna add the word yet, but I don't. There's gonna be changes. There will, and we certainly have some, big office spaces. Actually, we just have one big office space, and there have been some changes, but things keep leasing up. The former industrial site over on Pleasant Hill Road, Rich Tool, that has been leased. It's 75,000 square feet of industrial, but it's been leased. So, yeah, and retail has never surprised me because Scarborough, being a growing market, retail moves. They want to be near the growing residential market. So, I've always felt like this doom and gloom on retail didn't apply to us in particular. So there's always going to be movement there. But yeah, I think it was a surprisingly good report. I am curious about, I think industrial for the first time, they're saying it's still strong. It's just,
Back to reality.
right.
Yeah.
It's not increasing. Yeah. And the comment on cultivation, anticipating some real changes in cultivation and the demand for cultivation space.
Well, a lot of people are waiting for those people to go out of business so they can get the industrial space back at a reasonable price.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's some of that, given some conversations that I've had, I think there's some redevelopment potential for some spaces out there that we're gonna have to be pretty sensitive because regardless of where people feel about cultivators, there, as Tom said, there's a lot of them and they have a lot of people involved. And this is where I think we can come back in and take a look at the industry and see what it means for Scarborough.
One last thing, in terms of residential, Biddeford incredibly strong still, and then Lewiston, Auburn.
Yep.
As Greater Portland has just become too expensive. People have had to move, keep moving out, and especially
And
Auburn.
then
Yeah.
At the
Augusta.
end, and Auburn,
Augusta.
Yeah.
have just really experienced a lot of growth.
And there's a lot of multi-units up
Right.
there.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, the demographics of Biddeford are every employer's dream right now. And if you were looking for work, I wouldn't advertise in Scarborough, I'd be advertising in Biddeford. The population is young, lots of folks in their 20s to 30, and their population is growing, and again, the opposite demographic than Scarborough. So not that one is good or bad, but just the reality of if you're looking for workers, early in their career, you're going to want to be talking about Biddeford. And that's my guidance is for Scarborough employers, advertise in Biddeford
Yeah.
for
It's
employees.
not far.
Yeah, exactly.
Westford also.
Any questions at all? Any other comments? Jim, Nick, if you guys are still on, anything?
I'm all set.
Thank you both for joining.
Yep, nothing for me.
Move to adjourn.
So
Thank everybody.
Thank you
Thank
all
you.
very much. Nice to see you.
All right.
Thank you.